Gonzales. Excited to get to share with y'all an update, and again, this is not an update about my mission work or even about our work, because y'all have fellowship in this, but rather as Paul did with the church at Antioch in Acts 14:23, I'm getting to share with y'all the things that the Lord has done with us, and what a privilege it is to get to be a part of His work. And of course, when we talk about mission work, the greatest example of a missionary that we have is the Apostle Paul. And so he finds himself in Macedonia after leaving Philippi under some persecution. He comes to Thessalonica, and he spends several weeks there working as a tent maker and teaching and preaching. He establishes a young congregation. And because the persecution comes there also, for the sake of those brethren, he leaves in a bit of a hurry. But he's concerned about them, and so he writes back in rapid succession a couple of letters. And it's here towards the end of that second letter, 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 7, he reminds them of how he behaved while he was there. He says, "For y'all know my conduct when I was among you, that we did not behave ourselves disorderly." That is, he was not out of step with the gospel, but his practice matched his preaching. How important that is for us as Christians today, that the things that we do and the way that we live should match the doctrine we teach. And then he goes on in verse 8 and he says, "Neither did we eat any man's bread for nothing, but worked with labor and travail night and day." And here's the idea. That last word, travail, carries the idea of his worry and his concern for those brethren. It was because of that love and concern then that he was willing to do the hard work and put in the long hours. He was literally burning the candlestick at both ends, working as an evangelist and also as a tent maker to support himself and those that were with him. He did that because he cared. He says it so that we might not be chargeable to any of you. That is, we don't want to be a burden, because he was there to help, not to be a burden. He says it's not because we don't have authority, quite the opposite, right? In 1 Corinthians, he's going to talk about the fact that it's right and it's proper for a preacher to live of the gospel. But rather, he says we did that to make ourselves an example unto you to follow us. And of all the things that Paul says, this is one of the most challenging thoughts, and he repeats this in other places, like 1 Corinthians 11:1, "Y'all be imitators of me, even as I am also of Christ." And what a challenging thought, the idea that you as a Christian and me as a Christian, we ought to be able to say, you just watch me. You look at me, and whatever you see me do, you do that. Because if you're copying me, you'll be following Jesus. Can we say that? We ought to be able to. That's what Paul says here. And so Paul was setting an example that they could follow as they lived their Christian life and reached out to those in the surrounding communities and villages. And he was working those long hours, putting in the hard work so that he would be a help and not a burden. And he did that because of his care and concern. So with our work at the Manna Project, our goal is to imitate Paul in doing those very things. And again, by way of review, when we talk about what the Manna Project is and what we do, we're dedicated to cultivating hope around the world. And we do this by training evangelists, training disciples of Christ, training preachers and leaders in the church. And we place a heavy emphasis on agriculture, on self-sustainability and sufficiency, so that these guys can support themselves when they go out. And so we do this with preacher training schools and also some resource centers where we train workers and other missionaries. And we place an emphasis on planting congregations and growing the church and growing the disciples and the leaders who ultimately will oversee those works. And we teach agriculture and other vocations they can use to support themselves. I've got a little bit of a thought issue here. I apologize for that. But it's been amazing. The things that we've seen since we've been involved in this. We've seen some 3,000 baptisms, some 200 congregations established, and as of September, 274 preachers trained and sent out into the field. It's truly wonderful, the things that God has done. And so again, what we're doing, we're training these preachers. We're not bringing them here to America, teaching them to be Americans, do things the American way, but rather we're going there within their culture, within their context, just teaching them to do things the biblical way. And so again, we place this heavy emphasis on organic farming and intensified agriculture so that on small holds of land, they can grow enough crops to supply all of their food and all of their needs. And we're also starting to teach some other trades as well and things that they can use to support themselves and help out in the village. And again, placing that emphasis on church growth, on evangelism, and also on benevolence. And that's one of the things also in 2 Corinthians chapter 8 that Paul talks about is those Thessalonian brethren, that they were poor, but even in their poverty, they were giving. And that's one of the things that we're working on, is teaching these brethren that even in their deep poverty, these African brethren can be benevolent. They can share their crops, they can share their skills and things that they have and give back in a very meaningful and powerful way. And so we talk about the places that we work and where we're going. Of course, when we're here at home in the United States, we try to do the same things here that we do there. Really and truly, it is the same thing. The gospel doesn't change wherever you go. And, so we work with our home congregation, also help other congregations as we have the opportunity to do so. We've also been able to take part this year in some short-term missions in Latin America and in the Caribbean. And then, of course, we have an established presence in Nepal and then in East Africa, particularly Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. And we talk about the funds that we receive and where that money goes. We want to be sure that we're good stewards of what we have and that there's transparency and accountability. And so what we're doing with those funds, we're using those to support our school staff to deal with facilities and infrastructure, with logistics and healthcare, emergency needs, those things like that. And that's really a big deal. Because the healthcare system we have here in America is not great, but it's better than Africa. A lot of times over there in Africa, if you've got a medical emergency, you can get help, provided that you've got funds. And that's a really big deal. And so earlier this year, one of our farm workers came in contact with a spitting cobra in amongst our chickens, and that cobra spit in his eyes. But we had what was needed, and so very quickly we were able to get him the help that he needed. He's okay. He has his health. He has his eyesight. We thank God for that. Also, he decided he didn't want to work on our farm anymore. But so being able to do that is a big deal. And then also, we cover the cost of the international travel as we go over there several times a year. And producing educational materials and training resources. One of the things that's really cool that I'm excited about is being able to start using AI to do some of that. You can get anything in English, but getting training materials in some of these native languages is very difficult. And so I've started out with some of the smaller works that we're using in our preaching schools, and I fed it to ChatGPT and said, give me this in an editable document in Tanzanian and Swahili, and 30 seconds later, here it comes back. So I sent that to the brethren over there, said, I want you to look this over. And so this is something that they know, and they went through it. They said it's very clean, very few grammatical errors. The doctrine hasn't changed at all. So that's amazing. That means we're able to use this to very quickly get more materials into their language. So I'm really excited about that. Now here's what we're not doing with the funds. We're not using that to pay our students a salary, and that's something different. A lot of guys do that. And consequently, I personally know of some men who've been to preaching school 3 or 4 times because they get paid good while they're there. That's not what we're about. We want them to be self-supporting when they go out. That training starts when they come in. So we provide them a place to sleep, we provide their food, we provide their medical care. If they want extra money for a cell phone or something like that, we give them seeds and a hoe and tell them, raise your own funds. Now that does mean that not everybody wants to come and be a student at our schools, but that's okay. We're not looking for everybody. We're looking for those men who see the importance, see the need, see the value of Africans doing for Africa and are willing to put in the hard work and the long hours and the sacrifice so they can be a help and not a burden. And that does mean then that, some of our students come from different places, So like one of our students, when he came to us, he was a Muslim. And we sent him out as a gospel preacher. And so really blessed to be able to see what can be done with that. And again, it's about following Paul's example. Because we care, because of that concern, being willing to put in the hard work and the long hours to be a help and not a burden, and then set an example that others can follow in leading souls to Christ. And so to talk about the places that we've been this year, I want to talk very briefly about Uganda. Uganda continues to be a very difficult situation because of the rebel groups that are there. This summer, the nation of Qatar came in and established a peace treaty between the rebels and the government. That didn't last very long. A couple of weeks ago, Trump negotiated a peace treaty between the rebels and the government. That's already been broken as well. And actually, November 1st at dawn, there was a coordinated attack in Fort Portal District, Bundy Bujo District, and Kisesi District. These are the places where we are, where our guys are living. At dawn, they attacked military facilities, police facilities, and teachers' colleges. There were hundreds of people involved, dozens of casualties. Thankfully, the Ugandan government was able to rather quickly repel that attack. I assume, had that gone differently, there would have been more to follow. So it continues to be a difficult situation, but this is still home for these brethren. They still live there, and so they continue the work. In September, we had a graduation. 2 years ago, we had 20 students who began the program there. We have 16 men who finished the course. And so the 16 graduated in September. They've gone out now into the mission field. They're supporting themselves and doing the work, establishing congregations in Uganda, some of them actually going across the border to Congo as well, a place that we certainly cannot go. They're going. And again, this is what it's all about, getting souls into Christ. And so graduation week, there were several visitors from the community who came, were taking part in those festivities. And Sunday morning, after Bible class, there were 2 souls that realized that they were lost and they needed their sins washed away. And that couldn't wait another hour. So everybody stopped what they were doing, went down to the river, baptized these 2 precious souls into Christ, and then came back a little bit late and worshiped with 2 new members of the body. And that's what it's all about right there. And again, one of the things we love doing when we're able to go is, going out to the villages and looking at their farms and seeing what they're doing and little things we can teach them to deal with erosion control and increasing their crop yield. And again, small gains in crop yield make a big difference in the standard of living, because for these guys, 90% of their budget is food. I hope 90% of your budget isn't food. But for them, that's 90% of their budget. And so small gains in yield make a big difference in the quality of life. And so it's always great to be able to do that and be in their villages and show them love in that way. And again, it's about being willing to put in the hard work and the long hours because we care, so that we can be a help and not a burden, set an example then that they can follow in reaching the towns and villages around them. Moving now across Lake Victoria to our newest work in Kenya, really excited about the things going on there in the village of Wangarot. This is our newest school, and so here's Leah with one of the ladies in the kitchen. And, last time I was here talking about the African diet, the Africans ate rice and beans and rice and beans and rice and beans, and sometimes they'll make a wallpaper paste out of cornmeal. Not awesome. And so here Leah is teaching one of the ladies, using the things that she had in her kitchen, how to make cinnamon rolls. She'd never heard of that before. Something so simple can make a very hard life just a little bit sweeter. And again, talking about food, here at the school farm, using the land that's there to grow the food that our students eat. And that's being irrigated with drip irrigation. That water comes from rainwater that's been captured, so free water that's turning into food to help the students and the neighbors there. And of course, as those crops grow a little bit more, we're going to be putting those heavy layers of mulch down to keep the moisture in the soil. And I mentioned teaching trades. Here are guys at Wangarot learned masonry this year. And so they learned how to mix the cement and make the blocks, and then take those blocks and build something useful out of them. So when they go out to the village, they can build their house. They can build a church building. There's a lot of people who live in something that basically is not a house. And so they can help them by building them a house. And that's powerful. And again, talking about water, having clean and safe drinking water is really a big deal. 2 of the most common diseases over there are cholera and typhoid fever. They are devastating. They destroy families. They destroy villages. They're rampant. Very preventable. Cholera comes from contaminated drinking water, typhoid fever from unsafe food handling practices, namely not washing your hands. And so here, our guys, Paul and the other brethren there, they'll go into a village. They spent the better part of the day here with elementary school kids, teaching them the importance of cleanliness and teach them how to wash their hands with water and soap. And something so simple that can be done to eradicate a devastating disease and really improve the quality of life of these families in these villages. That opens hearts and opens doors for the gospel, which then, of course, that's the next thing that's taught, is the gospel of Christ. And again, talking about water, we give water to our neighbors in unlimited supply. They can come good, spring-fed water that's safe. They can fill as many jugs as they want, as often as they want. But if they're going to get the water, they've got to talk to a member of the church. And that's because, again, we're not just giving away water. We want to talk about the water of life. We want to get them into the book, the things that are most important. And again, when I talk about we do the same things here that we do there, really and truly we do. And one of the things we love doing when we go is we go door knocking with these guys, get that experience, that training with them, and building that kinship and that working relationship. And so on this occasion, we went out in 4 groups. We knocked doors for 3 hours. We knocked on 10 doors. And during that time, we set up 11 Bible studies, because one of the doors we knocked on, they had company. And that guest said, could you also come to my house? Here's my address. I want a Bible study too. It's amazing to see the fertile soil. I'm going to tell you guys, we're not going to get those kinds of results here. But we are going to get results. There are souls around us who are hurting, souls that are hungry and searching, looking for something that makes more sense than what's going on in Washington. And what a blessing that we have the truth. And we get to share that with them, carry this treasure in earthen vessels. And it does mean putting in the hard work and the long hours, but y'all, it's worth it. Because again, getting those souls into Christ is the chief thing that we need to be about. And so there at Wangerot, our preaching school, we have 5 students there, and it's been so great over the last year to get to know these men, to see their passion, and watch them grow in faith and in knowledge. And when we're there next month, these men will be graduating and going out into the mission field, and we've got another class of students that will be coming in, really excited about that. And to date, the total budget for this school, as these men are getting ready to graduate, has been $0 American dollars. We're super excited about that. So we're taking the things that we've learned there and working on applying those in other places that we work. And again, it's about following Paul's example, setting an example then that others can follow, working to be a help and not a burden. And we do that because we care, and that ought to motivate us to put in the hard work and the long hours to do what's necessary. One of the trips we took this year that was a little bit different was we went to Istanbul. And the reason why we went was this family right there. I'm sitting next to Sanger. Across from Leah is his wife Anna and their young son Sia. This family, they're Christians. They're baby Christians. There's a lot that they don't know, a lot that they don't know that they don't know. Also, they live in Iraq. We didn't want to go to Iraq, so we went to Istanbul. And so we rented an Airbnb, spent a week with them there, and we spent the lion's share of our time sitting around this table with open Bibles, grounding them in the faith, teaching them the fundamentals about the church, the work of the church, the worship of the church, how to evangelize, all of these things. And through our travels, I had long layovers, I've been to Istanbul about 6 times. I have looked, I have searched, I have hunted. As far as I can find, in a city twice the size of New York, there's not a congregation of the Lord's church. And so we did with them what they are now doing at home. We worshiped there in the home together on the Lord's Day. We sent them home with the equipment and the encouragement and the knowledge to go home and start house church. And that's what they've been doing. And we've continued to stay in touch with them online, to study with them and pray with them and encourage them. And I tell you, security is a concern, because if the persecution doesn't come from official channels, if your neighbors find out you're talking to people about Jesus, they'll come after you. And so there are times where something will happen and they'll get spooked and they'll go quiet for a while. And so just recently, we went a couple months without hearing anything from them. And then Anna popped back up and said, hey, we're okay. We're here. We've been through some very difficult things, but we're okay. So we continue to pray for them and to work with them as we can. And prayerfully one day, maybe we'll get to go and visit this congregation that they're establishing. And one of the things we're able to do on this trip also is rekindle an old contact. Jeff Pouladon's a native of Iran. He's living in Istanbul with his family, not because he's a Christian, because he's not, but he wants to be. And so he's fled there for safety, and he'd kind of fallen off the map, and we're able to rekindle that contact with him and resume studies. And one of the things I've learned through our travels I absolutely love is the seed principle of the gospel. It's true here, it's true anywhere in the world. if you follow only the New Testament, you will be only Christians, and you will be the only Christians. That's true here, that's true there. And we came into contact this year with the Lord's Church in Athens, and there we met a brother by the name of Ibrahim. Ibrahim is also a native of Iran. He fled Iran on foot, hiked over the mountains to Turkey to get to safety. And while he was there, he became a part of and still has contact with the congregation of Iranians living there in Istanbul that are worshiping according to the true pattern. But here's the thing. Even though Turkey is officially a secular state, they have just a very short list of approved religions. If you're not on that list, it's illegal. So they don't have a website. They don't have a sign out front because it's illegal. But they're there. That's encouraging to know that in such a dark place, there is light. And I'm especially encouraged about that because of Jeff. But again, security is a concern. You got to be careful. You don't just go around telling people, hey, I hear that you're a Christian, I want to be one too. That's how you end up in jail. So I've not yet gotten his permission to put him in touch with those brethren. I'm working on building that relationship and building that trust. But prayerfully, that'll happen, and those brethren will be able to help to bring him into Christ and give him the fellowship that he so desperately needs. And again, it's because we care, because we're concerned, that we're motivated to do the hard work and put in the long hours so that we can be a help and not a burden. And we need to be setting an example that others can follow in following Christ. Moving back south to Africa now, to Tanzania, one of the things, of course, every time we go, we're teaching agriculture. We're teaching these guys how to improve their crop yields and get more food on the table so that they can be self-sufficient. And so when we go back, we check and see how they're doing. And so we walk through the farm and we inspect it and say, look, we taught you this and that's not right. You need to fix this. You're not doing this at all. That can be better. That can be improved. And again, these things matter because it increases the yield, improves their quality of life. And so now I realize y'all have a hard time imagining this, but picture, if you will, 6 months without a drop of rain. That's the long dry season in Africa. So here we are at the end of that long dry season. 6 months, no rain. And here's the farm at the school. It's amazing. They're doing all the things that we taught them. It was so exciting to see. They've got those heavy layers of mulch down, keeping the moisture and the fertilizer in the soil. They're irrigating those crops with rainwater that they harvested. They're propagating from seeds and from cuttings. They're doing succession planting. So they've got a bed of okra here that's mature and bearing fruit. There's another bed of okra a month behind that, and then another bed a month behind that. Have okra running out their ears, and we'll have for a while. And not only that, Faustin's harvesting the manure from his chickens and rabbits, and he's using that to create a compost tea, free organic fertilizer that's helping those crops to grow and put food on the table. So we were so encouraged and excited about what we saw. So we said, look, this is great. The only thing is you need to do this with 3 times as much land. And so a couple weeks later, they sent us a video. They were out there with hose, tilling up 3 times as much land. And so after inspecting the garden, we went back into the school building there, that building there in the background, and we were sitting there with Maurice talking about the budget there at school. And they have a very aggressive plan and an aggressive goal. Just after graduation in September, there's a new class of students that come in. They're going to be there for 2 years. And the goal is, by the time that class of students leaves, to have that school being fully self-supported. And the way I see them working, I think they're going to do it. So excited about that. And so we're sitting there with Maurice talking about this, and as we're doing that, we're looking out the window, and we saw 3 different ladies from the village come to the garden and take food back to their homes. And so that's not only feeding our students and faculty, it's also feeding our neighbors in the village around us and making a difference in their lives as well. And not only that, they're raising chickens here. Faustin's got a dozen chickens houses like this one. Each has birds in different stages of development. And they're raising those for meat and for eggs. That's putting protein into our students' diet. But there's also food vendors and restaurateurs that are coming regularly and buying those eggs, buying those birds. That's going to go a long ways to helping that school to be self-supporting. We're really encouraged by the things that we see going on. And again, it's about those relationships that we build. One of the things we did that's a little bit different this year is we put on a children's seminar. And so here's Leah and a couple of the local ladies teaching these kids. We counted 64 kids. Most of these came from non-Christian families. This is an area that's 98% Muslim. The second religion to that is the tribal witchcraft, and denominationalism is a distant third. Most of these kids come from those families outside of the Lord. And 64 kids. Leah said it was organized chaos. Sometimes just chaos, but mostly organized. And so we took a page from the Restoration Movement from Brother Walter Scott, taught those kids a 5-finger exercise so that they went home. They could teach their parents the 5 things that they needed to do to become Christians and invite them to come and do exactly that. And so that was really exciting. And again, the church there is very young, and there's a lot of things that we know that we take for granted that they don't know. You know, in this majority Muslim area, the church there has been there about 6 years. When we first got there, the only 2 Christians in town we brought with us. The church there in Talawanda now is thriving and doing well. There's 3 roads out of town. Doesn't matter which road you take, the next village you come to, there's a congregation. With this class of students that just graduated, we're working on the villages beyond that. And also there's some little cow trails you can follow out into the bush and come to a Maasai village. We're working on those villages as well. But again, little things that we take for granted that they don't know. And so we got a hold of some VBS songs in Swahili. And so we were giving these to these graduating students and teaching them these songs. It was so cool to see these men learning these songs and getting excited about them, putting their own twist on them. You know, we taught them things like This Little Light of Mine and Jesus Loves Me. They'd never heard that song, Jesus Loves Me. And so these things now they have in their toolbox, so when they go out in these villages, they can reach those kids and make those connections and impact those families in a powerful way. And again, talking about those connections, here at the top of the screen with Leah is Helen, that's Faustin's wife. Very dear sister, love her to death. She's going to be working with us in our women's program. Super excited about that. And again, one of the things that's come to be expected when we're there is to have a ladies' day. And again, most of the ladies that come are from non-Christian families, but they're there and they're excited to learn. And this is where the rubber meets the road, where the doctrine matters. One of the struggles we have is with finding translators, and this time we completely failed to find a lady translator for Leah. We wanted to show that we're not walking out of step. Our doctrine, our practice matches our preaching. We're not going to step out of bounds. We respect what God has said about the roles of men and women. So with Maurice to translate, Leah handed me her notes, and I taught this Ladies' Day. And we talked about the New Testament church. We talked about the design of the church, the worship of the church, how to become a part of the church, how to live as a Christian, all of these things. These ladies were excited to receive this teaching, wanted to know when they could learn more. So there's some Bible studies that are now ongoing with the local Christians there. And those little things, it's really encouraging, exciting to see how we can touch these lives. And I mentioned we had a graduation there. One of the things I love doing about graduation is the exit interviews. You know, we'll sit down with each student individually and find out, how did we do? We'll kind of quiz them about their knowledge of the Bible and their ability to evangelize and counsel. You know, if I come and I'm a Muslim man and I've got 3 wives, how are you going to deal with this situation? How are you going to counsel me? How are you going to teach me? What's going to happen to these women? How are we going to deal with this situation? And also, you know, find out, what do they like about being a student? What do they hate? What could we change and do better for the next class of students? Because that's why we're there. We're there for them. And so it's always encouraging to have these conversations and see how these men have grown. And it's the little things that make a difference. And sometimes you make that connection by playing silly little games with the kids. Sometimes it's simpler things. You know, during the graduation, we set up a tent to keep the hot sun off of everybody's heads. About halfway through graduation, the wind picked up and the tent laid down. But these 2 boys, nobody said anything. They just jumped up and they each grabbed a pole. And those boys make the best posts you ever did see. But it matters. Those little things show we're not here to be served. We're here to serve. We're here to help and not to be a burden. And so I mentioned we had a graduation, have 8 students that graduated. I really wish I had time to tell you about all of them, but I'll just hit a couple. There in the bottom right-hand corner is Jackie. She's not going to be a preacher. But it's been so great to see her learn and grow over the last couple of years. She is now in Dar es Salaam learning trades and taking intensified English courses. She's going to be serving as Leah's translator. We're there next month. So we're working on that problem. She's going to be working with us in the women's program as well. Behind Jackie is Mateo, the old man. He was one of the first converts when we came to Talawanda. And one of the leading families there at the church of Talawanda is his son Simon and his wife Glenda. So he brought his children to the Lord, and now his grandchildren are being raised in the truth. And now he's gone through the program, grown so much in faith and in knowledge. He's going to be staying there at Talawanda. I'm excited about that, and prayerfully, he's going to be able to help us as that congregation continues to mature, to identify the men who can serve as elders, to oversee not just that congregation, but this preaching school and this work that we're doing as well. Because again, the goal is for this to be totally self-sufficient. So if there comes a day that we never go back, that they will be able to continue, because this isn't our work, it's the Lord's work. And so really excited about that. There next to Mateo is Nice. Nice is Masai. His mom was one of our first converts also. And Nice has come to the school now, and as he's graduating, he's going out to one of the Masai villages. His mom is leaving the church at Talawanda to go with him and help him in that work. Also, she wants to hear her son preach. But they're going out, establishing a congregation there. Of these 8 graduates, 7 of them are, bless you, 7 of them are staying in not Kasese district, Chilinzi district, wrong country. 7 of them are staying there in Chilinzi district, working with us to establish congregations in some of these surrounding towns and villages. The only exception to that is there in the bottom left-hand corner, Henry. About a year ago, we helped establish a congregation in a village outside of Arusha. Henry's now preaching for that congregation, but these other 7 are there in Chilinzi, supporting themselves and working to establish congregations in some of these towns that we had not reached yet. And so we're really excited to have them there and continue to be working with them. And I've mentioned this women's project a couple of times. Really excited about this. This was Leah's brainchild. She saw a situation, saw a need. So often over there in Africa, young girls are not able to get an education. You know, school is not free. And if you can afford the school fees, if you've got 2 kids, a son and a daughter, you can afford school fees for one, you send the son to school, because he'll graduate and he'll get a job and he'll take care of you. That daughter's going to get married and take care of her husband's family. And so a lot of these young girls, they end up with no education or no skills and nothing. And they end up in some very difficult situations, making some bad decisions, trying to survive. And so what we've done, we've built this place, and our goal is to target young women between the ages of about 17 and 25, give them a place where they can be safe for a year. And first and foremost, we're going to teach them the gospel, because that's the foundation of everything. We're going to teach them some homemaking skills, cooking, cleanliness, first aid, things like that, so they can care for themselves and their children. Teach them some trades that they can use to support themselves and help them transition back out into the villages and be okay. And we're really excited about that. We're a little bit behind where we wanted to be for a couple of reasons. We had initially planned to open this facility in September, but number one, we were behind on construction. We've had some personnel changes. That farm worker with the Cobra, he was working for us at Hope. And so we've had some personnel changes. We now have a new couple there that's working for us, Renatos and his wife Beatrice. They're running very quickly, getting the construction caught up to where it needs to be, and also working on the farm. It's doing great. All of the food is there, so when these young ladies come, what they need to eat is ready for them. And Beatrice last month was baptized into Christ. She is now a sister. Renatos continues to study, and Lord willing, soon he will also be called a brother. But the other reason why we delayed opening is because we listened. The local brethren explained to us that life flows a little bit differently there than it does here, and that it would make more sense for us to open in January. So that's what we're doing. Lord willing, we're starting in January. And we're starting small because we're dealing with people's lives, and we don't want to bite off more than we can chew. So we're going to start with 4 or 6 young women and work with them over the next year. And as we've been filling those slots and having interviews with prospective girls, there's one in particular that stands out in my mind. She's a Muslim. She has 3 children. She had 4, but that 4th child passed away. And when that child died, her husband abandoned her and the other 3 kids. And but she has seen the impact that our graduates from TSOP have made as they go out into the villages, and she's seen what's going on there at the School of Preaching. She's heard about hope, and she says, I'm here, and I'm ready to learn what you have to teach me. I want to learn the Bible. I'm here for what you can teach me. And so what a privilege, what a blessing to be able to be a part in changing families and changing lives. in this powerful way. So we're really excited about that and hopeful about what will be going on with that over the next year as we begin there in January. And again, it's about being willing to put in the hard work and put in the long hours because we care, so that we can be a help and not a burden, and set an example that can be followed and carried out into the surrounding villages. And this is something that's really significant. One of our graduates there in Tanzania is Astone. Astone's working to establish a congregation in the trading center of Lugoba. And he got us an invitation to preach at a Pentecostal church building, if you could call it that. And so we're there, and so at this invitation, I preached about unity and the importance for us to be unified, and that the only way that we can be unified is to follow the pattern. I talked about the pattern for the church that Jesus built, and how that church is organized, and how that church worships, and the name of that church, and how that church works, and the pattern for how to be saved, and the pattern for repentance, and the pattern for Christian living. And I realized that's a lot of ground to cover. But I was able to do that because my translator's watch was broken. But everybody was excited to receive that teaching, and they said, when can Aston come back and teach us more? And here's the thing. Everybody's sitting in those cheap plastic chairs, and that's fine. But up at the front, there's a nice, easy chair. And that's where the head pastor sits, because he's the head pastor. And every time they come together, they're going to take up a collection, and it's going to go in his pocket because he's the head pastor. And if we're going somewhere, and there's a nice seat up front, that's where he sits, because he's the head pastor. Everybody else can ride in the back of the truck. So when somebody like Aston shows up and he says, no, I'm okay. I'm here for you. I want to be a help and not a burden. That's something they've never seen before. That's something that matters and opens hearts and opens doors for the gospel of Christ. And one of the things that we see everywhere in the world, we see it there and we see it here too. I'm not talking about Greg's foot either. He stuck that out there right as I took this picture. But on the other side of that foot, there's a Maasai family, 6 precious souls. 2 of them are Catholic, 2 of them are Anglican, and 2 of them are Muslim. Now, if I was going to pick 3 world religions that literally wanted to kill each other, it would be those 3. But they said it doesn't matter, it's all the same. You know, the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church, they're the same. And, you know, we have the Bible in our Swahili, and we can understand that. And the Quran's in Arabic. We don't know what it says, but it's the same book, just in a different language. And so we talked about, hold on here, God is not the author of confusion. And the Muslims worship on Friday. These other groups worship on Sunday. They can't both be right. The Anglican Church listens to the Bishop of Canterbury in England, and the Catholic Church listens to the Pope in Rome. They can't both be right, and the Pope that they have now says something totally different about gay marriage than the last Pope. They can't both be right. The only way for us to be right is to follow the pattern that God is looking for true worshipers, to worship Him in spirit and in truth. We've got to go back to the book. This was something totally new and radical. They never heard this idea before. And they were excited to receive it. There's so much that people just don't know. And that's true here as well. I remember a couple months ago that Mormon church that got shot up. What really caught my attention were the responses to that. People saying online, this is just proof that Christianity is under attack. Well, hold on. Those folks aren't Christians, they're Mormons. But you see, the world doesn't know the difference. They just see people who say the name of Jesus, and it's all the same. Brothers and sisters, we have work to do. There's so much confusion, so much misunderstanding, so many people that are hungry. They don't know what they don't know. What a privilege that we can carry the truth to them. And so it matters. And again, It's because we care that we all need to be willing to put in the hard work and the long hours, to be a help and not a burden, and to set an example that others can follow. And I realize that's hard. I get home at the end of a long day at work, I just want to sit down and do nothing. But there's somebody that needs a Bible study. There's somebody else that needs some groceries. There's somebody else that needs their grass cut. There's work to be done. And there's opportunities. Last month the government shut down, and so many of our friends and neighbors that were depending on the government for food didn't get their food. But who wasn't shut down? The kingdom of our God. What an opportunity to show them the love of Christ and show them we can help not just with the physical needs, we can help with the spiritual. And so when we talk about where we're going and our plans for 2026, largely we're going to keep doing what we've been doing. Next month we'll be back in Tanzania and Kenya. We're going to continue to develop these works that we have, explore other opportunities, and as we can, help congregations here and train other missionaries as well. When we talk about what our needs are, y'all, we need you. We need your encouragement. Not every day is a super awesome day, which, by the way, I mentioned Uganda. Y'all be praying for our brethren in other places as well. Tanzania last month had an election. And the current president is unelected. Her predecessor mysteriously died of natural causes, at which time she assumed his office. Last month was her first time to stand for election. Anybody that put their name in the ring to run against her was charged with treason and put in prison. So she was the only name on the ballot. She won by a landslide. In response to that election, there were some demonstrations and some riots. And so around that, the internet in the country was shut off for about a week and a half. All foreign media was expelled from the country. Bus service was stopped. There was a hard lockdown on the country. And the official reports were that there were 2 casualties, 1 protester and 1 police officer. The opposition party said, no, that number's more like 700. As foreign media was let back into the country, they saw some evidence of mass graves, and they said it's in the thousands. Also, the president has put out official statements to the citizens of Tanzania that they are monitoring all messages in social media, and anybody who posts or messages something that is critical of the current president or her government will be charged with treason and thrown in prison. Y'all, you might not like who's in Washington, but at least we're free to say so. And so it's been a very difficult situation there, a lot of hardship, a lot of suffering. And we're praying for peace. Incidentally, as we've been praying for peace, they had said that there was going to be another demonstration on Tanzania's Independence Day, December 9th. Again, preemptively, bus service was shut down, the internet was shut down, there were hard lockdowns. There were peace. The streets were quiet. Maybe not the peace we were praying for, but peace nonetheless. So please continue to be praying for our brethren. We need prayers for safety, prayers for opportunities, prayers for workers, and prayers for the funds and resources to be able to continue doing what we are doing. And so we're looking for 9 congregations or individuals to give us one shot of $5,000. That'll fully fund the things we have planned for 2026. And again, I want to thank you all for your continued fellowship and support. And I also want to stop here for a moment and call attention to the congregation. Last time I was here, I talked about the 2 elders overseeing our work in Italia and Brother Charlie Brown, who is very sick, and I asked for prayers for his help, for his health. He was at the cattle auction recently. It's been a long time since he's been to the cattle auction. So excited to see that. I wouldn't say he's well, but he's much better. He's on the mend. Also, his wife passed away a couple months ago. So please continue to pray for him as he goes through a very difficult situation. They were together 60 years. Pray for that congregation. They're going through a hard time. We are worshiping the Granbury Street congregation in Cleburne, not to be confused with the Granbury Church of Christ in Granbury, Texas. We're on the street that goes to Granbury from Cleburne. I have 5 good shepherds there. They're overseeing our work and our funds. Any funds that have been received in Italia, it's there, it's safe. We're working on getting that moved over. There's banks involved. It takes a minute. But going forward, we'll be receiving funds there at Granbury Street. But please do continue to be praying for Natalia and that congregation, Charlie Brown, the good work there. I'm not going to run off in a big hurry, so if you have any questions for me, please don't hesitate to get with me. Thanks for your kind attention this morning, y'all.